Big Jim and Tom and Barry Boyland took Santa Claus's big white boat with its outboard motor and went fishing for wall-eyed pike, leaving Poetry, Dragonfly, Circus, Little Jim, and me to guard the camp and to fish off the dock if we wanted to. Well, we didn't want to do that. We'd wanted to go fishing in the boat and couldn't. 3 was enough to go fishing in one boat when we're trolling, which is a way to fish that I'll tell you about in another chapter. The 5 of us who stayed behind went in swimming and got cooled off. Then we lay around on blankets in Poetry's tent. We even slept until Santa Claus came over after having taken his afternoon nap, which the doctor had said he ought to have every day. I could see right away that Santa Claus was beginning to like Circus very much, there not being any children in his family. Someday they might adopt a boy from some orphan's home or somewhere, they said. Anyway, he asked Circus and Dragonfly and Little Jim to drive to town with him in his car to get some minnows, so the rest of us could go fishing when the boat came back, which would be along about 5 o'clock. That left Poetry and me alone at camp. The summer resort was 2 or 3 blocks distant on the east. Santa Claus's cabin was between us and that, and on the other side was forest. And away back in there somewhere was an Indian reservation where I thought Indians lived the way Indians do in the stories we'd read about in books. Barry hadn't told us we couldn't take a walk if we wanted to, and we certainly wanted to, especially since Poetry had his camera along and I had my binoculars, and we needed a chance to use them. So pretty soon, when Mrs. Santa Claus strolled over and saw how sad we felt and how much we wanted to take a walk and do a little exploring, she laughed with her very special giggle bubbling right up out of her throat and said, "I think this would be the very nicest place to read my book. So if you boys want to scout around a little, I'll watch camp for you." It was as easy as that. So, camera and binoculars in hand, and a little homemade map of the territory with us, we started out. We followed the shore for a while, and every now and then took a look out onto the lake and far across to where they were trolling for wall-eyed pike. When we'd gone about what we thought was a mile, we looked at the map and then started off straight north toward where there was supposed to be an Indian reservation, which means a tract of land reserved for the Indians to live on. We walked and walked through dense forest, birch and ash and cottonwood and balsam and spruce. We were studying trees that summer and making a scrapbook of the leaves of different kinds. So whenever we found a new kind, we wrote down its name in a little notebook and picked a leaf, which we put in our hats to take back to camp. Our parents would be glad to know we were interested in things like that. All of a sudden, Poetry stopped and said, "What time is it?" I looked at my little black-faced watch with its white numbers, and it was almost 4 o'clock already. "We ought to be close to the Indian reservation by now," he said, taking out the homemade map. "Let me see. This is south, and this is north. We've been walking straight north for a half hour." "Have we?" I said. "I thought we turned east back there at the big pine tree." "East?" Poetry said. "That's where we turned north." "We did not," I said. And just that minute we heard a sound that sounded like somebody screaming with a quavering voice. We'd heard that a few times before since we'd come up north, and Barry told us it was a loon, a diving bird that has very short tail feathers and sounds like a screech owl with a ghost's voice. Well, if that was a loon, then we knew that we were close to a lake. We listened. The sound had come from behind us. But the lake couldn't be behind us because we'd just turned around. Poetry and I looked at each other, puzzled. It was about time to start back to camp, and we hadn't found any Indian reservation. Then we heard the cry of the loon again, and this time it was in just the opposite direction, which it couldn't have been if the bird had been where it was before. So I just stood there, all mixed up in my mind. Poetry and I looked straight at each other again. Then we took out the map and looked at it and laughed at ourselves, because the map showed there was a wagon trail to the north of us and the lake to the south. If we'd go either way and walk far enough, we'd find either the lake or the wagon trail, and after that, all we'd have to do would be to go the right direction and we'd come out at the camp. But which was the right direction? Neither one of us knew, and Poetry didn't have his compass because he'd lost it that snowy day last winter when we'd gone up to see Old Man Paddler. But that's in another story, which you've probably already read. If we knew which way was north, I said, we'd walk to the wagon road. That ought to be closer than trying to find the lake. If the road is north, then the lake is south.